Hello, folks. Welcome back. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. Apparently, today, the African National Congress, the 26th of October, 2025, the African National Congress releases an immediate press release saying that the ANC welcomes the Not in Our Name declaration by freedom-loving Afrikaans-speaking South Africans. The African National Congress welcomes and salutes the courageous stance taken by the Afrikaans-speaking South Africans who authored and co-signed the article, Not in Our Name, Afrikaners Respond to the Misuse of Their Story in U.S. Politics, published on News 24 yesterday, the 25th of October. Well, first off, not in your name. So you can account for the personal experience of all 2.8 million Afrikaners. You want to talk about cheek and narcissism and arrogance? Yeah, let's start with that. These freedom-loving South Africans recognize the unity being forged in our country is essential to building a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. They affirm that nation-building requires honesty about our painful past and a shared commitment to redress deep inequalities caused by centuries of oppression. Well, there haven't been centuries of oppression. There have been centuries of warfare and conflict. There were decades of oppression. And as far as, yes, nation building requires honesty about the painful past, how about you start telling the truth about the past and stop whitewashing it and wiping out the history so that South Africans can't learn the true nature of what happened in South Africa on both sides of the aisle. And you're saying that your nation is forging non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, prosperous South Africa. Yet you pass legislation that limits the number of racial minorities who can be employed in management positions in private companies. That's not non-racial. That is racism. You determine the number of men and women, that is sexist, who can work. And democratic? Nobody picks your president. Oh, I'm sorry, someone does. Members of parliament. That's not democratic. The people have no say in who your president is. Your parliament picks whoever they want, regardless of what crimes they're accused of and the actions they take in office. Now, the ANC notes with appreciation their clear rejection of attempts to distort South Africa's history and weaponize it to advance the far-right agendas abroad, as they powerfully stated. Far-right agendas abroad. That's comical. South Africans who are racial minorities have been claiming about racial discrimination for years. There's no far-right agenda here. And this is a comment that came from it. We reject the narrative that casts Afrikaners as victims of racial persecution in post-apartheid South Africa. This framing now being used to support the far-right Great Replacement theory in the United States is not only misleading, but also dangerous. It distorts realities of South Africa, weaponizes our history, and reduces a complex social context and necessary leveling of playing fields into a simplistic symbol of white decline. Well, that asinine university professor obviously drafted statement is ridiculous. The far-right Great Replacement theory in the United States. What are you talking about? 400 Afrikaners? They weren't even all Afrikaners. Many of them were white South Africans and others were Indians and coloreds that have come to America thus far are going to replace the white population of America or keep it robust. You people are crazy as a batshit nut whack jobs. 10,000, 100,000, 500,000 white Afrikaners coming to America is not going to change the demographics of this country. We turn 750,000 to 900,000 foreign nationals, almost all of whom are brown or black, into citizens every year. Do you think a little drop in the bucket is going to change the demographics of this country? You're just liars. You're race baiters. You're hateful people who distort the truth. And while we're at it, America's white population isn't declining. It's increasing. When I was a kid, it was about 130, 140 million white people. Now it's 230, 240 million. That's a big increase. As a percentage of population, the white population is declining because of our generosity in taking people from broke-ass, broke-dick, useless, third-world countries that are oppressed. And most of those people are coming from countries where people are brown or black. And we take them generously. So your propaganda about the Great Replacement theory is just that. This statement continues. This principled position acknowledges the painful truth that Africans in general and black people in particular bore the full weight of dispossession, humiliation, and exclusion under more than 3 centuries of colonialism and apartheid. Their suffering was structural, systemic, and generational. Well, Shall we talk about the colonization of the rest of Africa by the Bantu-speaking peoples arising from West Africa and moving east and then down south through the Rift Valley, how they pushed the pygmies further into the jungles of Central Africa, how they tried to oppress the Neolithic people and ran into a buzzsaw, and so they went south where competition was less intense, and how they pushed aside the Khoi and the San peoples in what is today Zimbabwe and then South Africa. You want to talk about colonialism? Let's talk about the entire history of Homo sapiens. Don't be selective. The ANC reiterates that the transformation and redress agenda is not an act of charity, but a moral and legal and constitutional obligation to correct those historic wrongs and create a society based on equality, justice, and shared prosperity. Except the instantiation of that objective is anything but justice, equality, and shared prosperity. You habitually give higher bail amounts to white defendants or refuse bail to white defendants for minor offenses when violent offenders who are black get virtually no bail and get let out. You habitually deny employment and government tenders to people based on their skin color. You habitually deny poor minorities access to university in favor of unqualified black applicants. That's not equality. That's not justice. That's not shared prosperity. That's revenge. That is what this is, revenge against the people who weren't even born when these events happened. Over 60% of South Africa's minority population has been born since the end of apartheid and have only known the ANC as its government. This garbage they're putting out here is utter nonsense, along with the so-called Afrikaners, not in our name. Whose name? The elite, privileged, blue-haired Tannies and university professors who hate their own people? We commend these South Africans for asserting that they are not pawns in the culture wars of other nations, but citizens in a free South Africa, one that continues to grapple with its past while striving for a better future who live in it. Really? Do you really? You allow the most vile comments by Nota Boloye to go unpunished. Yet you try to destroy the life of a member of parliament for a video that was made 15 years ago as a youthful person trying to make a point about society, not attacking anyone. Whereas Nota's comments attack the people. You call that just and equal? Utter nonsense. Their statement affirms the true patriotism that lies in facing the truth and building bridges of understanding, not denying the lived unequal realities of our people. This is the spirit of reconciliation that our founding leaders envisioned when they declared that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. Well, indeed, except that your government hasn't done that. And who's denying what happened in the past? The colonial wars, the Bantu migration south, the displacement of the pygmies, the Khoi, the San, the arrival of Europeans, the displacement of the Khoi and San, the 6 wars fought between the Xhosa and the settlers, the arrivals from Europe, the Mfukane, which killed upwards of 1 million people, according to estimates by historians. Nobody's denying that. The Union of South Africa Act, which created a country, which shortly after that went into racial oppression with the 1913 Native Lands Act. No one's denying that. The behavior of the National Party imposing apartheid, separate development from 1948 until 1992. No one's denying that. The murder of Steve Biko. No one's denying that. Helen Zille exposed it. You're lying sacks of manure. You're denying history. You're denying the cooperation between the Boers and Mfengu. You're denying the cooperation between Basotho and the Tswana and the Griquas and the Trek Boers to defeat Mzilikazi. You're denying the truth of black Africans who worked alongside and fought alongside the Boers during the Boer Wars against the English. You're denying the concentration camps that killed 16,000 Afrikaner women and children. You are denying the truth and distorting it, lying about it. Everyone has suffered from injustice. And using racial laws to prevent people from enjoying and experiencing the true prosperity of South Africa is not just, and it's not equal. It's revenge politics, and that's what South Africa has. You sit up there and pontificate about how equal South Africa is, and then under the law, people are not treated equally. And you blame it on apartheid. Apartheid ended 33 years ago in 1992. Yet you've applied more race-based legislation to balance the scales, and all it's done is create a cadre, a cadre, a coterie of privileged elites. It has lifted 5 million black South Africans in the middle class, but it hasn't spread wealth to the rest 3 times as many black South Africans lived in abject poverty in 2025 as did under the National Party. Explain that one. People live in riverbeds and get washed away when flooding in KwaZulu-Natal. An insurrection takes place in your country against the ruling ANC. Political parties form on the sole basis because they can't get perks and privilege and rise to the top. MK, the good party. The EFF. There is no equality under the law. It's a fiction. The rich and powerful, black and white, do what they want to do in South Africa. The criminals do what they want to do in South Africa. You want to talk about the Freedom Charter, which you don't even mention here? Because a group of people prots the same cock that you want to prot? Shame on you. South Africa is for all South Africans, regardless of their race, their religion, their creed, their color, their gender. And when you start living up to those ideals of the Freedom Charter, instead of spewing that you are, when you start obeying the Constitution, instead of passing unconstitutional laws to expropriate property from people without compensation, and you allow municipal governments to do that, when you stop abusing South Africans, black, white, and brown, perhaps then people begin to take you seriously. African National Congress. You're a disgrace to the liberation movement. You're a disgrace to the Freedom Charter. You're a disgrace to the Constitution of South Africa, which you promulgated. Shame on you. What say you, South Africa? Mzansi? Cheers.